Hello, Lexi and Dylan. This one is called Hansel and Gretel. It's a classic by Holly Hobby. Not so long ago, there was a woodcutter who lived with his wife and his two children, Hansel and Gretel, in the shadow of a towering forest. He worked tirelessly, but times were hard and he could no longer sell enough wood to take care of his family. Each night they went to bed hungry. "Listen to me," the wife said. "We cannot feed your children any longer. We must get rid of them." She was the children's stepmother. "Get rid of them," the woodcutter shouted. "Never! I love my children." "Then make 4 coffins," the wife scolded bitterly, "one for each of us." With great shame, the woodcutter finally agreed to abandon his children to the forest. "I'm so afraid," Gretel whispered to Hansel, that she and her brother had overheard their parents discussing their fate. At the window, Hansel saw bright pebbles gleaming on the ground in the moonlight. "Don't worry," he told Gretel. I will think of something to save us." In the morning, the woodcutter and his wife took Hansel and Gretel deep into the forest. They built a fire and gave the children meagre scraps of bread. "We must go to work now," their father said. "We will come back before dark to get you." But the children waited long past dark and no one came to take them home. "I want to be in my warm bed," Gretel cried. "We'll soon find our way," her brother told her. When the moon appeared, a trail of white pebbles gleamed on the ground before them. Hansel had dropped the stones behind him as he and Gretel followed their parents in the woods. The stones led all the way back to the woodcutter's cottage. The man rejoiced when he saw that his children were safe. The stepmother only pretended to be happy. "Those two must go," she said to her husband only days later, "and don't argue with me." This time, as the parents led the children deeper into the forest, Hansel broke up his pieces of bread and dropped the crumbs on the path behind him. Again, the woodcutter built a fire to warm them, and he promised to return for them at the end of the day. As darkness blackened the woods, no one came to take the children home. Soon moonlight illuminated the forest, yet there were no breadcrumbs to be found. Birds had eaten every morsel. Hand in hand, Hansel and Gretel wandered through the woods, hungry, cold, and lost. Then on the third moon, they suddenly came upon a cheerful little cottage. The dwelling was made of cake, with a roof of cookies and vanilla icing, and windows of sparkling sugar. Hansel and Gretel broke off pieces of sweet chocolate and hungrily ate them. A woman bent and withered with age suddenly stepped into view. "Who dares to nibble at my delicious house?" When she saw Hansel and Gretel, she grinned from ear to ear. "Please, come in, precious children." The old woman fed them steaming bowls of soup and creamy pudding. Once they had eaten their fill, she led her 2 young guests into a cosy room and tucked them into clean, warm beds. "Can you believe how lucky we are?" Gretel asked drowsily. "It's hard to believe," said Hansel. The kind elderly woman was not what she seemed. She was a wicked, red-eyed witch, over 150 years old. She liked children. Indeed, she liked to eat them for her supper. She had created the irresistible cottage just to entice curious boys and girls into her clutches. The witches slipped into the bedroom to watch Hansel and Gretel sleep. She sniffed the air. "How sweet they smelled! What a feast awaits me," she whispered. At the dawn, the witch snatched Hansel from his bed and locked him in a wooden cage. "Now we must fatten him up, girlie," she gloated, as a wild and human cackle escaped her. "Hansel, you must think of something," Gretel whispered to her brother when she brought him food. "The witch is hungry." "Maybe you will think of something," Hansel said. "I'm trapped." Each day the witch poked through the cage of the boy's ribs and thighs. "Eat more," she cried. "I want my roast to be juicy." "Gretel, you must do something," Hansel urged. "You must." Days passed. At last the witch could wait no longer. "Fetch wood," she shrieked at Gretel, "while I sharpen my best knife." The next time Gretel went to the pantry, Hansel pressed his tearful face to the bars of the cage. "What is going to happen?" he asked. "Is this a nightmare? I must wake up." The witch lit the fire to heat the oven. Soon she ordered Gretel to duck her head inside the dark tent to see if it was hot enough to bake bread. Gretel knew what it was, not bread, whom the witch intended to bake. At that instant, the girl experienced a rush of inspiration. "Duck inside?" she asked. "But how?" "Silly child," cried the witch. "You do it like this." She stooped and thrust her head into the mouth of the oven. "Do you see?" "Yes, I see," Gretel shouted. With all her might, she shoved the backside of the witch, and the hideous creature tumbled into the oven. Gretel slammed the heavy door shut and dropped the iron latch in place. Dreadful shrieks echoed through the still air of the forest. Gretel covered her ears and closed her eyes. When at last the cries ended, Gretel carefully opened the oven door. There was nothing inside, nothing at all. The witch was gone forever. Gretel released her brother from his prison. The two of them hugged and danced and shouted with joy. Before they fled that awful place, they dared to look through the dusky rooms where they discovered pearls and precious stones scattered everywhere. Can we take them? Asked Gretel. Every last one, said Hansel. They filled their pockets. At long last, after wandering the forest for days,